This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TSG Training and our monthly webinar, where today we're going to be talking about the ISTQB Foundation Mobile App Test, a new course. As you know, at TSG, we like to get things done first, and this is no exception. And so I'm going to tell you a bit about the course today. Who's on the line? Angelina Samaroo. She was involved in helping to set the syllabus for the course. A lot of experience, worked with me for around 20 years. I thank her for that. And obviously, me, Bernard Nelson, you probably know I'm MD and owner of TSG Training and a fellow of the BCS. However, you don't want to hear me talk, really. You've come to hear the expert Angelina talk. So I'm going to hand over to her now. Ange,
okay.
take it away.
Thank you.
Share your screen.
Yep, thank you very much. So hello everybody, welcome to this webinar on mobile application testing. So this is the ISTQB version of the mobile app course that we had before. So the agenda here is a little bit about ISTQB and what's the purpose of this qualification. As you're probably aware, those of you with experience of ISTQB courses, there's usually a list of business outcomes. So we'll just cover that just so you know where ISTQB is coming from. We'll then look at the course objectives and the kinds of things we'd cover during the course. So the course is a 2-day course with an exam taken via a Pearson VUE voucher. So you will have an opportunity to spend some time in the classroom learning both theory and the practical. So we'll cover the elements we see here. So move on to the next slide. So the business outcomes. When we were building the syllabus, what the key thing was, we were looking to try to get some real-world hands-on experience in the classroom. So even though it's only a 2-day course, the business outcomes are geared up towards actually being able to use some tools when you get back to work. Now, it is actually a foundation course, so it's not intended to go in depth. It is about giving you the beginning and end sort of set of processes. So we'll begin with the business technology and drivers, so you understand a little bit more about mobile app strategies that might be out there. And then we look at the things in terms of challenges and risks that you're probably familiar with already in ISTQB courses. What's special about this course is the hands-on objectives. So you will find during the course, we now have these objectives we didn't have before. So learning objectives now become hands-on objectives, HO. So we have these where you can have just a demo or you actually do the exercises yourself. So it makes it just more practical. Hopefully more interesting in the classroom and more memorable when you go back to your workplace. We'll begin with the mobile device types. Now, I'm sure you're probably familiar with a lot of these, with the current smartphones and probably the demise of the tablet. We're also going to look at the original sort of basic feature phones, because of course in some parts of the world, feature phones are still prevalent. So depending on where this course is being taught, you may be working on an application where actually you are using an app, you are developing an app that other people may be using who don't have access or the money to invest in very, very expensive smartphones. So we will cover those, albeit briefly, but just to remind you, they still exist. And there are some people still using these device types. We're going to look at the different business models for mobile apps. And again, everything is changing quite fast. Mobile applications, no different. There is a host of resources online to work out where things are happening. So we'll look at some of the websites that give us statistics on the operating systems that are most used, on the device types, on the screen orientation, on the screen sizes. So there's a wealth of information out there that can help you to understand what kind of business models you can have. And of course, you've got the freemium models or the in-app purchases, and you're probably familiar with all of that. I use the train services an awful lot. It is very annoying. All the adverts that come up when I just want to get a train time. But that is the business model they've chosen. So we'll look at those kinds of things, what's available to us. We can support that by the actual analytical data that's also available online. And these will show us graphs of who's using which machines. So this course is split between Android and, well, mostly Android and Apple phones. And it's looking at understanding who's using which kind of device more, which operating systems people use across the globe, and where you might like to direct your efforts in your organization. Now, of course, this is at a strategic level. Some of you may be working at that level, and some of you may be following what's been said, but at least you can have an understanding of where your application might be going. And as ever in these courses, we say, check online as often as you can. The world is changing and the data is there. So what we'll show you will be current on the day, but of course it will become outdated. So we'll show you where to get those resources to keep up to date with what's happening in your world if you're spending time on mobile app testing. We're going to look at the different types of mobile applications. So again, you may be familiar with a native app versus a hybrid app versus a web app. They each come with their benefits and costs and challenges. We'll talk about those, how you access them, how you create them, and the resources that are available to you, not so much for native apps, because that would be down to you, but for hybrid and web-based apps. There are some benefits, there are some challenges to all of them. So as part of the course, we need to cover the different types of apps that you can have. We're going to look at the different mobile architectures. Again, we're going to talk about client and server technology because it still exists here, so not everything has changed. So we have thin clients and fat clients, but we also have more that's relevant to mobiles than we had beforehand. So how's the data stored at the back end? How do we get connectivity? How do we keep things going? So the mobile architecture goes up a level beyond what we've had before for those of you that are familiar with normal app testing on PCs. Now we're going to be looking at what else we need to consider when we're developing mobile apps. We're going to spend a fair bit of time, the practical element here on the development platform. We're going to be making a lot of use of Android Studio. So those of you familiar with Android Studio will be aware that it has an emulator that you can access. We'll look at that so we can use those emulators to help us to test out the mobile app. We have had some apps developed so that you can get a chance to test them out as well. You will also have access to a mobile phone that you can test out the app on your phone. We'll show you how to get apps onto your phone via an APK file. We'll show you how to uninstall, reinstall, delete, etc., so that you understand how to use these tools in a safe environment if it's an emulator, because you're not using it on a mobile phone, on a real mobile phone, but you may have your own devices that you can use at work where it's safe to use the mobile phone as well, so to test it properly. So here we spend a fair bit of time, the Handson Objectives, spend a lot of time on Android Studio. So you'll be getting familiar with those, using tools, testing them, checking them out, and seeing how they work. As ever in all ISTQB courses, they are about testing. So we have to look at the test strategy. A lot of it will be what we've had beforehand in terms of challenges and risks. But of course, from a mobile app, there will be extra challenges that we would have already considered. We then need to look at those in the context of an overall test strategy. So we need to consider the things like the field testing we're going to talk about later, and the connectivity. So those will, of course, change. How do we access the kits that we need if we don't have it? So we may have to go for crowdsourcing. We may have to go to look at accessing through a remote lab. So what would our strategy look like? What is our resources? What is our budget? And then we can work from there. So very similar to previous test strategies, just of course in the mobile context. But we couldn't complete the course without that. So obviously it's mobile phone testing, so you would not be surprised to find there's a lot of part of the course on testing for the different device features. So the input testing, the gestures, the gyroscope, the device monitors, the power, what happens if you're trying to run an app with low memory, if you're on and off a train or whatever. So we spend a fair bit of time on that. And although it is a practical course, there is still an exam element at the end of it. So whilst we're having fun in the classroom testing these things, we still have to learn the academics behind it and recall those for the exam. It is still a foundation level exam, but at the end of it all, hopefully you're going to be going through to take the exam to get a certificate. So bear in mind, please, that there is still an academic exercise to this whilst we're going through the whole raft of device features, many of which you will be familiar with. Some of it we will test on a real phone, and some of it we will test via the emulator. We're going to talk about globalization and localization testing. So of course the whole point of a mobile is to be mobile. So if you're developing an app, it needs to render properly in different parts of the world with different languages, different keyboard layouts, different preferences. So we'll mention that of course we need to consider this. This may not be part of your specific strategy, but that will have to be something that you need to think about and be made aware of in this course, that there are things that we could look at to test out globalization and localization testing. And again, we have developed an app that you'll be using to test that out as well. A key part of mobile testing is field testing. Now here we're going to look at actually getting out and about. So in my career, when I was testing handhelds before, we didn't really have to go out. We did it in-house, but now, of course, it would be great to get out of your workplace and actually check. So I spend a lot of time on trains. I'm not sure if a lot of you do, but it can be very difficult if you're trying to pay for your car parking ticket on while you're on the train. You're trying to get a ticket on when you're on the train, and then the signal goes. So the weather has been terrible. What happens in the rain? All of these things, many apps are pushing us on to using them on a mobile phone, telling us that it will work. It's easy to ping money here, there, and everywhere. Is it really? And sometimes the only way to test that is to actually get out in the field and actually check it on a sustained basis. So the classroom environment and the lab environment is very useful, obviously, but at some point we need to get out, and that needs to be part of your test strategy as well, to consider how do I check that my app will work on these various phones. In all these courses, we talk about automation. So there are automation options available. So we have user agent automation approaches. We have also device-based automation approaches. So we want to look at, okay, as much as is possible we can automate. We'll mention these approaches so you understand that there is automation possibilities out there. So not a huge part of the course because it is about the whole testing device thing. But of course, as you're probably familiar in ISTQB courses, we talk about automation an awful lot and the tools that we can have, that we can use. So we will finish up with testing for application store approval. If you do need to go through to get onto any of the Play Stores, app stores out there, there might be a process that you have to go through to test all of that out. Okay, so that's what we'll be covering in the course. Are there any questions? Bernard, I'm not sure if we're online. Are we online, Bernard?
Yep, I'm online, and I guess everybody can hear me as well. Can you hear me, Ange?
I can hear. I'm just wondering if there's any questions. Anybody want to know any bit more?
Doesn't sound like it. Everybody is unmuted. So, I guess no one has a question to ask. So there we are. So, okay, look, Ange, thanks very much for your time. Everybody, thanks for attending. Afterwards, we'll make this presentation available to you. You can get a recording of the webinar from our website. It'll be there in a day or two's time, or you can book a course with Ange. The next one is next month. Following that, if you'd rather book, talk to Paula. You probably all know Paula. Look at the individual spaces. But everybody, thanks very much for your time today. We hope to see you on the course, and thanks very much for your expertise as usual. And we'll talk to you again when we have our next webinar next month. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks everybody. Hope